Trump administration's four conditions on Iran mark a pivotal moment in nuclear diplomacy, demanding unprecedented Iranian concessions before talks can even begin. To understand the depths of this policy and its repercussions, we turn to Mr. Ibrahim Sher, an Iranian affairs expert who brings deep insight into Iranian strategy, domestic pressures, and of course, the possible red lines that Tehran may never cross. And from Washington, we're joined by Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, an executive director of the Global Foreign Policy Center. Together, they will help us understand the U.S. calculus behind these four conditions and whether they stand a chance of including a breakthrough. Now, welcome to Qnews, and I would start with you, Mr. Sher. When you hear these four strict U.S. conditions, what is Tehran's first instinct?
Allah, in the very beginning, thank you very much for you and your audience. The USA definitely in its relations with Iran for more than 40 years until now has the policy of the maximum pressure to be exercised against Iran. This is the first time that we see it exercises the maximum severe pressure. There is no way for dialogue or consultations at the political level. Even the spokesperson of Iran government mentioned that Harachi talked to and requested a direct consultation with Witkov, but Witkov refused. Now we can see these maximum pressures by USA and using the words of military to threaten Iran in order to impose the red lines. And before that, before any concessions, we have seen similar concessions to reduce enrichment temporarily for 5 years in order to revive the nuclear file and to have a negotiation. But they respond to lift some of the sanctions and to get away from the policy of the severe pressures and the threats of war. But until now, USA is refusing the diplomatic endeavors to have any dialogue with Tehran.
Mr. Russell, why does the Trump administration believe that it needs these four conditions before even beginning any talks?
Well, I mean, the basic bottom line here, and I can't speak for the Trump administration, obviously, is that they're
just trying to analyze the situation here, Mr. Russell.
Understood. I mean, look, what we're dealing with here is Iran is on the ropes right now. Iran's economy is having trouble. There's some dissent inside the country, and I think the Trump administration's trying to take advantage of that by leveraging the biggest ability that they have, and that's economic. What we're going to see here is that putting these conditions on Iran basically is, like you said, a red line. Either you comply with this, and this puts maximum pressure on them to halt any proliferation operations that they've gotten regarding their nuclear program, or face even more serious consequences, either economic, with the snapback sanctions that look like that they're going to be put in place by the United Nations, and by even more possible military force. I don't think military force is going to be the smartest move, but it's definitely getting them thinking in Tehran.
Okay. Mr. Sher, which of the four demands do you believe Iran will flatly reject, and why?
Iran will refuse definitely the delivery of uranium to USA or to surrender the amount of uranium it have. It will also refuse the halt of the complete nuclear program. It will request to revive the nuclear program. It may reduce to the enrichment of uranium for a certain rate, maybe to the zero sum, but will not be permanent. For several reasons, Iran believes that the nuclear file is the strength point. That means USA provided already the nuclear program to her, and it worked since that time for more than 70 years on the nuclear file. Secondly, there is a lot of difficulties. Iran does not believe that it receives the nuclear file, then it surrenders the nuclear file easily. There are several other files that have impact. So the Iran command believes a nuclear file is the siege against Western countries to prevent any interventions inside the internal affairs of Iran. Iran is pivoting toward Iranian internal files and focusing on internal also the nuclear file. At the end of the day, the Iraqi system will not be repeated, or Gaddafi system will not be repeated. So there are red lines for Iran that it considers a nuclear file against Western and USA interventions. Iran may reduce enrichment, may accept the delay of reviving the nuclear file, but to permanently deliver and submit and surrender the enrichment and the whole file is impossible. She will not accept that. It will not also accept to reduce the ballistic missile program. They have a persuasion and they have a belief inside the society of Iran that ballistic missiles is the sole protector of the state of Iran against any Western interventions and other against all aircraft systems against the other countries. This is an arm of Iran, and the ballistic missiles, long-range missiles of Iran, or we can call it it can have like a barrier against Israel. It will not easily surrender this program. This is the main protector and sole protector for Iran. These are the red lines for Iran.
Okay. Mr. Russell, back again to you. How do these demands differ from past U.S. negotiating positions on Iran's nuclear program?
Well, I think they become more stringent. I mean, in previous iterations, we've seen reductions as far as how they would use uranium, how they would enrich uranium for civilian power or medical research usage. We're seeing it go and directly attack the defense infrastructure for their nuclear program. For example, as your fellow guest pointed out, the ballistic missiles for the Iranian government to say that the ballistic missiles are defensive is categorically ludicrous. In fact, a vast majority of the Arab states in the region, including the Gulf states, are adamant that any additional ballistic missile research, particularly when it comes to a nuclear program or proliferations of additional ballistic missiles for nuclear weapons, is something that should be off the table, because it is not to defend Iran. As we saw within the past 6 months, Iran used it to attack a fellow Arab state, Qatar. So again, these are terms and conditions that the world is behind, because we've seen the active aggression by Iran, not just against Israel, not just against U.S. interests, but against sovereign Arab partner states. And that is a very deep concern. I think that that's why we're seeing the pressure and the terms that we're seeing put forward.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Sher, in what ways have the reimposed UN sanctions affected Iran's negotiating stance?
Such Western sanctions have economic impact against Iran, but most importantly, there is an adverse repercussion at the political side. There is a lot of sanctions, official and unofficial sanctions against Iran. There are more severe sanctions by USA and UN, but Iran, with these sanctions, Arab states also closed any window toward Iran, whether from through Europe and the mediation and other economic pathways. Also, these pathways were closed. That was not satisfactory for Iran, but that the current situation leads to these complications. Iran refuses to be shown as a state without any ability, or to be seen as a rogue state or sanctioned by UN. But EU insistence on this principle as a tool of pressure against Iran and to respond to the requests of USA government Despite that, Iran has several tools. One of them, in the future, in negotiations with the USA or Europe, Europe will not be a participatory in that. So Europe loses a very important strategic partner in the Middle East, especially in this vital area. In addition to that, Europe lost the opportunity with Iran with these UN sanctions because Iran, as I mentioned, does not need to be seen as a rogue state, but it has a very important sanctuary tools like any the strategic tools between Israel, Iran, and Russia. There was a good proposal toward Iran from Russia in order to be in a partnership at the strategic level. This is what we can call the pivotal countries request, and it lost such economic opportunity definitely.
Mr. Russell, can these conditions by any mean realistically be binding and enforceable if Tehran agrees?
I mean, let's be serious. Any
And
terms and
realistic. Let's be
conditions.
serious and realistic.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, even realistically, any terms and conditions that they put forward are only as good as those that enforce them or abide by them. We have been down this road before. We have seen this numerous times, and very specifically, we've seen this numerous times with Iran, where we have seen sanctions be imposed by the United Nations, by the global community, whether it's the U.S., EU, or insert country here. And there are always ways of getting around the sanctions. There are always loopholes in those terms and conditions, and people are going to find ways to exploit that. So, to the base of your question, are these enforceable? Yes, I do believe they are. Will they be 100% complied with? Probably not. It's never happened before. I don't see it happening now. But what I will say is this: we are starting to see the results and the ramifications on the Iranian government of the sanctions that have been put in place before. We're seeing water problems inside of the Iranian capital of Tehran, which the Iranian government is saying is a result of sanctions. It's directly affecting the Iranian people, and they're starting to get tired of this. I think what this will do is this is going to be the last stand for the supreme leader and for even Peshkarian as president. They're going to have to sit there and say, do they want to continue to put pressure on their own economy and their own people, rather than starting to come to the negotiating table and look at compromising, look at a diplomatic solution, and maybe forego proliferation of additional weapons of mass destruction or additional nuclear capabilities, including their ballistic missile program.
Mr. Sher, to what extent do these conditions mirror demands Iran has already resisted in past negotiations? For example, under the Jabka era.
To my opinion, I believe the current situation has changed compared to previous stages. The current situation, the dialogue and consultation, negotiation is more rigid with Iran. USA government used to depend and rely on increasing the pressures, but leaving a pathway for dialogue. But currently, Trump is closing any pathways for dialogue. There is no more room for dialogue or negotiations. There are reiteration and conditions that are set and against the Iranian regime. USA will continue these steps, but Iran sees that all of these are inexecutable. They cannot receive only reiterations. This is not understood by Trump administration currently. That's why everyone, as we call, these are the tools of public recruitment and the pressures and sanctions and other tools. These are tools to force Iran to accept the requirements and conditions which are not accepted by Iran. They will not surrender completely the uranium. They will never stop permanently the enrichment of uranium. They will not surrender to any conditions. All of these are refused to the government or Iran. That's why for both countries, for both sides, especially USA, to find a window for dialogue. It is time now to open a window of dialogue and to leave a ground for negotiation and more dialogue in order to reduce the war effects or war possibilities. But if there is no military action, I believe the sole solution is to accept to reach zero enrichment for a certain time, like 5 years. In addition to that, to revive some nuclear parts of the file and to re-establish and reconstruct several nuclear sites and to export the uranium to Russia, not USA, as a deposit to Russia. Then USA lift a part of the sanctions. I believe this is the sole solution that can be viable, that can be affected and executed through diplomatic relations up to the next year. We can see the fruits and fruitful outcomes if Israel does not do any operation or military acts against Iran. This is, to my point of view, the sole solution.
Mr. Russell, is the administration banking on maximum pressure alone to bring Iran to the table, or is there a hidden diplomatic offer?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't
Maybe
know.
another hidden diplomatic effort that could involve the IAEA, for example?
Well, I don't think the hidden diplomatic influence is going to be on the IAEA, but I mean, it is a very good question and one that should be looked at deeply. Just on the surface, your question brings to mind, like, is there a carrot and stick mentality going on? Is there a sub level where there is economic incentives for Iran from both the EU and Western states to be able to help bring them back to the table and help coerce them to play nice, if you will? The one thing we have to realize real quickly is that the comments made by our colleague in Tehran. I mean, if you think that the Western states or other Arab states are going to suggest that a possible diplomatic solution would be to take the uranium and ship it to Russia, the question's going to come up is, we ship it to Russia so we can put them inside the drones that they're using to attack Kyiv and the Ukrainian people? That's never going to happen. Look, everybody's got to hack, and I've said this many times on this network and all over the world. When you come to a situation like this, there has to be good faith. Iran has not demonstrated good faith in these types of negotiations before, and that is why use of force is usually a method that is on the table whenever they move forward in going to dialogue. And by the way, nobody's going to get exactly what they want. I believe that the West understands that. However, I believe that the government in Tehran, the Iranian government, needs to really take a look at, you're not going to get everything that you want. You have to start looking at what's best for the Iranian people as opposed to what's best for holding power, maintaining power, and trying to maintain your position as the leader of the Arab region. That's not going to happen.
Mr. Sher, what alternative strategies might Iran pursue if negotiations fail and sanctions persist?
I believe that Iran will rely currently on the oil. First of all, it will rely and focus on self-sustainment, which Iran started to rely for several centuries from the 1790s, and it will resort to the several tools of exceeding or avoiding the sanctions. They are used to do that. Third, it relies on its partners, whether conventional or unconventional partners. That means they will resort back to China and Russia for their economic support, to have better relations and stronger ties, to have fluids of economic exchange and trade along with China and Russia. And they will resort to new partners like KSA, UAE, Qatar. All of these countries for Iran are considered a new artery for political support. It will not only be satisfied to rely on these countries, Russia or China or Turkey east of Asia. It will resort also to Egypt in order to maintain its political stance and economic power, along with several countries taking care of any possible actions that may happen because of USA in the future.
Mr. Russell, what is the role of
Sayed.
military threat of quote-unquote green light in backing up these demands?
Uh, the, the threat of military is like I said, it's an incentive to get, it's the stick in the carrot and stick scenario I talked about earlier. Um, what we've got to realize is that when we look at the military option, basically the the Western allies are looking at this saying, look, either you can stop developing your advanced nuclear weaponization capabilities, or we will do it for you. Either way, you're going to lose the ability to weaponize uranium. That is, I think, the idea behind putting this at the forefront of the messaging to Tehran. And quite frankly, as you know, I'm not the biggest supporter of the Trump administration and its foreign policy at all. What I will say, though, is because of the fact that we're seeing the reports coming out of Tehran that the IAEA is continuing to be denied access, nuclear inspectors are continuing to be stiff-armed away from doing their responsibilities in monitoring the situation in Iran. Because of that, and again, not the first time we've seen this. Because of that, I think we're having to use very strong methodologies in convincing the leadership in Tehran to come to the table and come to the table with good faith effort to find a solution. But make no mistake about it, I don't think anybody in the region, including our Arab partners in the region, want to see the use of force. I don't even think that the U.S. military wants to really use that as an option either. But make no mistake about it, it is a serious option. It is an option that we've seen can and will be used in the execution of a mission to stop Iranian proliferation of mass nuclear weapons programs. The green light is very real. It's just a dependency on how quickly Tehran wants to start the talks again to see how green that green light is.
No, okay. Mr. Sher, do you see a path in which Iran accepts a subset of these demands as a bargaining chip to avert the war?
I believe Iran provided the best it can in order to avoid the war. Most importantly, the direct negotiation with the U.S. administration. More than that, it will not be able to provide anything for Iran. There is no concessions in the right place, as talked by Iran. More than that, that will be considered a waiver and surrender by Iran government. It believes that U.S. administration and other consecutive administrations have this strategy. Once you surrender more, the more requests you are requested by USA administration. So it believes by the surrender it will gain nothing, even in the direct negotiation and dialogue. Even before several months, it got nothing but only destructive war. Iran does not need to provide any surrenders or concessions. What it provided is enough to the point of view of Iran regime. Well, USA administration is ready to lift completely the sanctions to release the frozen assets of Iran outside in the USA banks and South Korea and Iraq banks. Will USA administration resort and return back all the assets of Iran? That is based on what Iran receives in order to respond actively. So currently we cannot expect more from Iran.
Mr. Russell, if Iran refuses, how credible is a U.S. threat to follow through on military escalation?
Oh, it's very credible. I mean, look, say what you will about the Trump administration and its use of military force up till this point in its second term, or even look at it in its first term, I will tell you right now, the use of force is a very real option. It's not an option that anybody likes, but it's an option sometimes they're going to have to utilize when you start looking at the actions of a bad actor not acting in good faith and seeking to gain weapons of mass destruction. That being the case, I think that there would be other options that both the U.S. and our ally partners in the region and around the world would rather see instituted rather than having use of military force as the lead option.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to thank my dear guests today, Mr. Ibrahim Sher and Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, for sharing valuable insights that help us understand the situation with Iran.